Okay, good morning, everybody. Hello, welcome back. How are you all doing this morning? It's Friday in San Diego. How could we not be doing well, right? My name is Laura Dietrich. I am the Associate Director of the Nonprofit Institute here at USD, and also a member of the faculty in the Department of Leadership Studies, where we house all of our nonprofit programs, degree programs, and I'm really proud of that. I'm also proudly serve on the board of Barrio Logan College Institute, where 100% of our participants go on to college. So thank you. So you can talk to me about that. So while you are here with us today, I want each of you to shamelessly promote your board service just like I did. Okay? The word governance, it's kind of boring. So I want you to really live into the dynamic aspects of governance and really just talk up your service. That's your chance today. And I want you to get pumped up to take your governance to infinity and beyond, right? I'm pretty sure a Disney lawyer is going to run in here and take me off stage any minute. So how many of you were not here yesterday? And well, it's kind of, and the rest, so about half are returning. So you're going to have to get caught up from the folks yesterday. But we did have some exciting things go on. One key highlight was our award from the Kaleidoscope Award for Good Governance, which was given to the San Diego Workforce Partnership in our larger nonprofit category, and to the Association for Fundraising Professionals in our smaller, under $500,000 revenue category. So please give them a round of applause. AFP will be doing a session, so if you want to learn more about how to get involved or maybe seek that award, you do not, here's a secret, you do not have to be perfect. No board is perfect, and it's a really interesting process, and those folks are here to share with you today about that process, and it's just a way for us to lift up the active governance in our community. So I have another little quiz. I'm a professor, so I can give a lot of quizzes. So how many of you in this room are fundraisers? I was going to say, if you're on a board, every hand should be up, even if you're on a board. We all know that. So in the world of fundraising, there's this rule of thumb that you should thank donors how many times, roughly? 7 times. So I need you to help me get to my number by thanking our sponsors. And here they are, and I'm going to say their names because it's so worth it, and you guys know that. Express our gratitude. KidSpark Education, Union Bank, Bank of America, California Bank and Trust, the San Diego Union Tribune, Aldrich, Cal Nonprofits Insurance Services, Community Boost Consulting, For Purpose Law Group, Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund, Moss Adams, Qualcomm, San Diego Business Journal, San Diego Grantmakers, Sempra Energy, and all our other generous supporters that are listed in our program. So thank our sponsors. You know what it's like to thank a sponsor. Let's hear it from the crowd. We would also be remiss if we didn't thank our terrific staff and our volunteers and our conference director, Lynn Corbett. People have been raving about the lineup and the speakers. It's all on Lynn and his team for that, so quite a buzz of energy, and we're going to carry that forward to today and have offline conversations with him if you think you have a suggestion for improvement, for sure. So I wanted to open today by just saying I recently had the honor of welcoming over 800 nonprofit philanthropy and philanthropy scholars, that's right, nerds, philanthropy and nonprofit nerds, to an international conference in San Diego. And part of my job was to familiarize them with our region. And I was thinking about this symposium today and the call to governance that each of you has answered. And I thought it would be appropriate to share some of those comments as a reminder that your work here in the nonprofit sector is a vital ingredient to the secret sauce that makes San Diego such a special community. So I started by welcoming them to sunny San Diego, but of course that was one of the 5 days it rains out of the year. So I moved on quickly to say, so welcome, and while you are here, I think you will discover that San Diego is so much more than just a laid-back surfer town. San Diego is an innovative multicultural border region. The original inhabitants of San Diego were 200,000 members of the Luciano, Coahuila, Cupeño, Kumeyaay, and Northern Diegueño tribes. Since that time in the 1500s, the region has grown to a population of 3.3 million. And you may know San Diego is home to a world-famous zoo, but our most popular attraction is an elephant of another kind, the USS Midway Aircraft Carrier Museum. Not surprising, since San Diego is the birthplace of naval aviation, has the largest concentration of active duty military and veterans in the world, and serves as the famous base camp for Top Gun, the real one, and the Tom Cruise one. So I let them know that arts and culture thrive in San Diego. Our Old Globe Theater and the La Jolla Playhouse have successfully sent more shows to the bright lights of Broadway than any other city in the country. San Diego is where Dr. Seuss brought the Lorax to life, and Frank Baum imagined an emerald city of Oz. Apparently the craft brew craze was born here, and we grow more avocados than any other city in the United States of America. So we're an international city. I don't have to tell you. This is really what makes us special. Just 20 minutes south of here, where you sit today, our border is the largest land port in the Western Hemisphere, 100,000 people crossing every day. And in City Heights, one of the oldest neighborhoods in San Diego, over 45 languages, 100 dialects are spoken. So San Diego is the epicenter for research institutions, clean tech, life sciences, a vibrant nonprofit sector, wireless communications, and an undefeated number 4 in the nation SDSU basketball team. Woo! I added that part for today. So given our beautiful beaches and natural spaces, it's not surprising we all spend a lot of time outdoors, supported by a lot of the environmental work and conservation work that's done by a lot of the folks in this room. That makes our wonderful lifestyle. Yes, right? Do you guys see yourselves in this story and the support and the fabric of this story, which is almost over, I promise. It's just really a lifestyle that's made possible by the nonprofit sector. But despite these many desirable characteristics, San Diego's nonprofit and philanthropic sector finds itself at the intersection of many of the most polarizing issues facing contemporary civil society. We have a beautiful blue bridge that connects our community and a supposed wall that divides us from our friends in Mexico. Ongoing cuts to government funding, a dearth of affordable housing, and a rollback on environmental regulations threaten the health and vitality of San Diego's binational community. But in the face of these challenges, the nonprofit and philanthropic sector and its partners are leveraging many existing resources to innovate and model sustainable solutions. So this was the setting for my conference, and this is the milieu for our conference here today. And I know it's what inspires you to get out of bed every morning to live your life of service and really do the work that needs to be done in our community. And this is a collective job, right? So I know we're all sort of nonprofit folks, but we know we don't do this work alone. We do this work in partnership with corporations and with government. And today, the University of San Diego and the Nonprofit Institute are proud to announce that we've joined one such collaborative initiative, Live Well San Diego. I would like to invite Nick Mascioni, who many of you know as the Director of Health and Human Services for the county, to the stage, along with my dean, Dean Nick Ladaney, and our Assistant Vice President for Government Relations, Pamela Gray-Payton, and they're going to talk about this initiative with you, and they would like to present a joint proclamation they have prepared for the university. So this is not just the Nonprofit Institute. The whole University of San Diego has decided to sign on and seek partnership with Live Well San Diego. So I'm going to give the microphone to you, Nick. Take care. Squeeze by you.
Let's give Laura a round of applause. Thank you. You know, to add to her list of what makes San Diego unique and stand out is that we are also leading the way in the nation of having the largest, most meaningful social movement of achieving health equity for all San Diegans. And Live Well San Diego, at the heart of it, is really about San Diegans helping San Diegans reach their fullest life potential, every San Diegan. And she talked about this. This is, the heartbeat of this is nonprofits. And I'm really proud because as a director for the Health and Human Service Agency, we have amazing men and women who work at the county, San Diego, and employees. Many of them are here from my team who made this partnership happen. But it's also the partners, I don't call them contractors, the partners we have. Some of you here that I've been working with for the last 23 years. And those partners, our contractors, if you will, we have over 350. You see, what separates the difference between private companies and nonprofit companies is that they all have deep purpose and passion, and they all have great performance. But the private companies is about a net profit. The public, the private nonprofits, government, it's about the public good. And so Live Well San Diego is developed with no contracts, only a social contract, a public handshake, that now it's in its 10th year, representing now with USD, the 487th partner. Well, we're approaching 500. Supervisor Fletcher has plans to announce who the 500th Live Well partner is. Stay tuned. But think about that for a moment. All eyes in the nation are San Diego. How can you get hundreds and hundreds of nonprofits, some of you in the audience and some of you that we hope you can join with USD in this movement, as well as private companies? Almost all of the elementary school districts. And when you think about faith communities, hey, we even have Dirty Dog's Pet Store as a Live Well partner. Pets count too. All with the inclusive vision of making a better life for all San Diegans by building better health, by helping people live safely, and this issue about thriving, which is the natural and built environment, and thinking about our most vulnerable populations and how we help them all thrive. To me, what excites us is that we're doing this together. It's the collective vision with collective impact for collective purpose. And so I am extraordinarily proud and appreciative. I've been a long fan of the Nonprofit Institute, I will say. I give my love to Dr. Emily Young, who I've worked with, Pat Libby before her, and the great work that the Institute and many of the other academic departments here at the university do, standing tall and improving the lives of San Diegans. And a person who stands very tall, that is driving the way for us, who has deep purpose and passion in his everyday life, is our county supervisor for the 4th District, Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, who has come on fire, I will tell you, and helping us reach and improving health equity for behavioral health and child welfare and environmental justice, but mainly he is a firm believer and supporter of helping all San Diegans live well. Please join me with Supervisor Nathan Fletcher.
Thank you, Nick. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you being here. It's been a wild year. It was a year ago. Just this time I was sworn in as a county supervisor, and I'm really pleased with the direction we're headed and the work we're doing. I also really appreciate all of our county workers who are here today, who get up every single day and do the work often not seen to care for children in need, to help immigrants, to help families, and to work in large part in collaboration and coordination with all of you. And so I appreciate our county workers. I also appreciate our top leadership in health and human services. When you come in as a new supervisor with a new attitude, a new direction, and a new approach, sometimes that can be a little disruptive. And, oftentimes, we'll be asking questions or suggesting things, and folks will say, well, supervisors don't normally ask that. And I say, well, they do now. But when I bring Nick or Dr. Luke Bergman an idea, I go, I have an idea, and where sometimes that causes anxiety, they say, hey, that's great. Let's figure out how we can embrace it and what we can do. And so we look forward to continuing to be partners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. I appreciate being recognized by myself. I've had this recurring problem lately. Yesterday morning at 4 a.m., Omar was there and Nick was there. We were out doing the point time count with Governor Newsom. And I have this recurring problem. I came out of the county recently, and these two ladies were outside, and they were so excited. They said, I can't believe you're here. I'm thinking I come to work here every day. And they said, no, we can't believe you're here. This is wonderful and this is great. And I thought, well, we're making the county exciting. We're getting excited. And I started feeling really good. I said, well, maybe these are constituents or supporters. And they said, can we take a picture? And I said, sure, we can. And they were really excited. And I was feeling really good about life. And as I walked away, I said, oh my God, I had no idea Gavin Newsom would be here today. And he's much taller, he's much prettier. He is infinitely more important, and I had to say, man, then I had to, like, do I tell him or not tell him? And I thought, well, then they're gonna post it, and everyone's gonna be like, that's not Gavin Newsom. And so then I told him, I'm like, I'm not Gavin Newsom. And they're like, well, who are you? And I'm like, well, I'm Nathan Fletcher. And they're like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, which is better. Someone else stopped me, and they said, oh, I recognize you. And they said, you're an elected official. And I said, yeah. And I'm thinking, oh, gosh, here we go. And then they said, you're a Marine. And I'm like, they got it right. I said, I am. And they said, why do you keep blaming your wife for your campaign finance scandal? And I'm like, I'm not that guy either. So any time I can come to an audience and just have the introduction, I'm like, hey, it's a winning day. But in all seriousness, and we want to recognize University of San Diego for what they do. But I just want to say a point about kind of the state of affairs in our country today, because it is challenging. It is difficult. There is a daily deluge of darkness and division that permeates from the highest level of our representative democracy, and it is not only something that creates turmoil and strife and conflict, it creates actual policy problems, right? The decisions that are being made are impacting communities, and not just in a how we feel. I live in the community of City Heights every day, and I can tell you how that community feels, and the fear, and the anxiety, and the sense of this is not America. This is not what I thought we were about. But it was this time last year that the federal government unilaterally ended the Safe Release Program. Safe Release Program has worked for decades on end, taking care of refugees who have a legitimate claim here to facilitate their transition to their family sponsor. And it was not a partisan issue. This was a program that had worked successfully for both Democratic and Republican administrations. And the Trump administration's unilateral decision to end it was to create a problem that did not exist, to have something to tweet about. And so we were faced with the prospect of literally tens of thousands of folks being dumped on the street. Folks who actually believed those words about send me, you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to breathe free, folks who took that literally and who had come here legally. And in San Diego, we said that that's not going to be a situation. We're not going to dump families on the streets. We're not going to leave them vulnerable. We're not going to leave them unprotected. And it was an incredible thing to see the county board of supervisors, not unanimously, but 3-2, it was okay, I'll take a win, take a vacant county building, to see county public health nurses and doctors, to see our amazing partners in the nonprofit community, heroic work being done by nonprofit partners, to see the city, to see the state of California step up with funding, the governor and legislators come down, and out of that, over 20,000 individuals who would have been faced with finding their way on the streets by themselves were greeted with love and compassion and empathy. They were given health care, a meal, a place to sleep. Their children were afforded a safe environment. They were connected with their family sponsors, and they have a view of America that I think is more consistent with who we are as a people, and that is the collaboration that is possible when government works with our partners in the nonprofit world to say we are better than this and we're going to do well. And I think that there are so many opportunities moving forward for us to continue to do that. As a Marine, I was struck by a man who was giving a talk, and he said, and this is a challenge that Marines face a lot when we get out, is sometimes the world doesn't make a lot of sense. And he said in the Marine Corps, they give medals to people who sacrifice themselves for others. And he said, and on Wall Street, you give bonuses to people who sacrifice others for themselves. Right? And there is a narrative here that at times it feels like people are saying there's a leak in your side of the boat. Now, if you've ever been in a boat, doesn't really matter where that leak is, right? We're all in this boat together. And so to be in a room full of folks who get up every single day and dedicate yourself to recognizing we are all in this together, that issues of economic justice impact issues of environmental justice, and issues of environmental justice impact issues of housing and healthcare and children. And the notion that on a path to a more perfect union, it does take all of us in some way coming together to do our part, and to be in a room full of folks who do that every day reminds me of the tremendous hope and the tremendous goodness that still exists in our people today. And so despite what you might see on cable news or on Twitter, the American people remain a good people. And there are a lot of people who get up every single day with the notion of, I am my brother's keeper, and I'm going to do what I can. And so I commend and appreciate each and every single one of you for what you do every day. And we're here to support you, and we're here to encourage you, and we're here to collaborate with you, and we're here to work with you. And so thank you all very, very much for everything you do every day. Now, specifically, what we want to do is honor the University of San Diego as an official Live Well partner. I feel like I'm here all the time. We come here for incredible collaborative gatherings like this. We come here for a homeless symposium. We come here, we partnered with USD on an incredible program called Innovate Up, a wonderful program providing economic opportunity and entrepreneurship training to folks in 6 particular zip codes who have really great ideas, but don't have the access to turn those ideas into reality. And we're here every day working with the University of San Diego, which really is an anchor and a pillar in our community for a long time. And so I'm incredibly pleased on behalf of the County of San Diego to be here to recognize the University of San Diego as a Live Well partner. We want to tout their youth engagement initiative that employs undergraduate and graduate students to tackle issues of education inequality, particularly in the Linda Vista community right here in the area, highlighting the Mulvaney Immersion Communities for Action and Humanity Summer Fellowship, working on Tijuana and other areas focused on homelessness, immigration, food insecurity. Obviously, the Hahn School of Nursing and Health Sciences does incredible work, again, not only here in Linda Vista tackling challenges in mental health, but throughout the San Diego region. And just across the board, we're fortunate in San Diego to have some incredible institutions that bring a sense of purpose, a sense of hope, a sense of faith. And we're incredibly pleased as the County of San Diego to recognize the University of San Diego and proclaim it University of San Diego Live Well Day throughout San Diego County. So to everyone at USD, we appreciate you. Thank you very much. Take a picture real quick.
I might have to call HR.
No, that's risk management.
Let's give him another round of applause.
Well, in the interest of time, we'll be very, very brief. It's unfortunate that we're partner number 487. We would have loved to have been earlier or later. 500 sounds like a good number. Thank you so much, Supervisor Fletcher, and to Nick and the County of San Diego. We are delighted to partner with the County of San Diego on the Live Well, the very important Live Well initiative. The Nonprofit Institute and the University of San Diego are anchor institutions. We are what we call an anchor institution, and that means that we have an obligation and a responsibility to our community that if we are to be successful, the communities must thrive. And so it is very much in keeping with what Live Well San Diego has been working on for 10 years, and the Nonprofit Institute and the University of San Diego in other ways. So we're grateful for this. We're excited about the partnership. Look forward to being a mentor to all of you and to those partners not represented today over the course of the program. Thank you very much.
You sure can. There's a lot of people's notes up here, so give me just 1 second. Well, thank you, and I think, you know, as nonprofit folks, we have a lot of, that was, you know, a little bit of pomp and circumstance, but we really felt like it was important to show that commitment on behalf of the university here in front of this particular audience. We thought it afforded us a really unique opportunity, and I really encourage you to go on the LiveWell website if you haven't and take a look and see if that makes sense for you or your own organization. So thank you again, Nick and team. I really, really appreciate that. It was sort of mentioned, I should just say, some of you I think were expecting Dr. Emily Young today, and she's been called away to be with her family, so she won't be here with us today, and you'll have to live with Lynn and I. So we are thinking of Emily today, and you can be sure she'll be back with us next week. In the meantime, she would want me to tell you some things. We have a conference app, and if any of you need to figure out how to use it, ask any volunteer, except for me, how to. And please use the social media broadly, widely. If you can get it on something that younger people use, be my guest. But let's really talk and get governance trending today. As you know, the Nonprofit Institute is intended to build leadership and organizational capacity, but all of our work is grounded in research. And some of our key research findings are in your booklet today, some reports that we've released in the last year. Two big ones, especially, our full PDF downloads are in there. One that we've done on the state of nonprofits in San Diego County, and then our revamp of our statewide, really seminal research on statewide nonprofit and foundation activity in California. Both of those are available to you in there, and I think there's a lot of golden nuggets, and if you give me a microphone and the word research comes out of my mouth, you know I'm going to talk about it for just one more second, because I think it sets the table for our next conversation a bit. So ultimately, what do we know? We know that trust in nonprofits is paramount to our success. It's the bedrock, and it's unwavering. All of our quarterly surveys that we do of San Diegans, that we've been doing for 10 years, show that above any other sector, nonprofits are trusted and to do the work that we do. And so as boards of governors, our number one priority, I think, should be and mandate is to protect that public trust. And some of our research of those folks has found that has some positive benefits. 2 times more likely to donate if you're confident, and 3 times more likely to volunteer. And you really got to pay attention to that volunteer management component, because volunteers are 3 times more likely to donate. So that's what we know about our generous San Diego community. And it's something, a lot of the stuff in the larger system is outside of our control. And we're going to talk about donor motivation today and some changing patterns in giving. But what is in our control is this trust. And on the front lines of that, as board members, I think it's really kind of paying attention to the things that get people nervous. So all of you should go back and look at your IRS Form 990 and make sure that you have checked the box that says you have a conflict of interest policy that is reviewed by your board, because I can't tell you how many nonprofits don't check that box, right? And by all means, if 2 people in your organization or on your board are related to one another, have the same last names, you might want to think about that. Just sort of engenders some questions. I've had 2 calls from the media even in the last week on some of this stuff, and those are things that are within our control. I wanted just to point to a couple other trends I thought board members would really be interested in. A lot of you who have seen some of this work know that the number of nonprofits has grown over the last 10 years. It's never decreased, the number of new nonprofits, as well as revenue, assets, and expenses. And you can see that in this graph here. And that gets me wondering, because every year when I say there's more nonprofits, everyone in the room goes, oh, are you kidding me? There's more nonprofits. And they say that the resource pie isn't getting any bigger. And that made me wonder, well, how do the assets and revenues keep going up if the resource pie isn't getting any bigger? So we looked at that a little bit. So is it getting bigger, right? And if it is getting bigger, what's driving some of that growth? And I just wanted to share that with you. And I think this connects back to also why the county and local government especially, they're huge important partners for our work. So in San Diego County, the biggest bulk of our revenue, 67%, comes from program revenues and fees. And that's not all nonprofits, but this is everybody collectively together. And actually, this does not include hospitals and higher ed, so they're not driving that number. That's all of us together. And 26% comes from contributions, and that contribution space is that sweet spot that we kind of all care about right now, that we're sort of nervous about, individual donors, right? And what's up with them, and what are they doing? So we looked at that, so I'm like, okay, is it program revenue or contributions that's driving this growth? And what we found was, here's how it breaks out in a pie chart, and in terms of that, and then there's special events, 1%. So you can ditch all your special events now. Now I've relieved you of your duty of that. But what we know is that program revenue, if I look year over year for the last 2 years that are available, program revenue is only, they actually decreased by 2%. So what was driving this growth? It's kind of counterintuitive, but it was contributions. So that's contributions not just by individuals, but by foundations, corporations, and whatnot. They make up that piece of the pie. How did that happen? And then, is there anything unique about that? And this is the one piece I wanted everyone to pay attention to. They did grow, but not for all nonprofits. So large nonprofits with revenues above $1 million saw positive contribution growth. And small nonprofits, which is the majority of the sector, have budgets lower than $1 million, saw shrinking contributions. So I think that if you are on a board of a small nonprofit, this is something we kind of just want to be thinking about and talking and strategizing about, okay? And what we can do about it. And lastly, I just want to say there's a lot of talk about changing donor motivation, right? Is the tax bill going to be the death knell of the nonprofit sector? And, if people aren't being told to tithe because they're not going to church, or millennials don't want to give the same way as Gen Zers. So there's just a lot of talk in the stratosphere about individual giving and its role in the sector. And the problem with that is we don't know a lot yet. We do know from data that we've accessed and looked at is that donor retention rates have been declining for a long period of time. I think our foundation folks will probably talk about that a little bit. And we did a national survey at the end of last year that was featured in the Chronicle of Philanthropy that showed that 52% in the last 2 weeks of the year were still planning to make an end-of-year gift, right? And it didn't matter what their income rate was. None of it correlated as important. Didn't matter if they were going to itemize on their tax deductions or not. So to me, I felt like people still had a little spirit in their heart around a season. It wasn't necessarily tax-driven or that kind of a driver for their work is that they just still plan to give. And so how do we tap into all of this and understand all of that? I think our community foundation panel that we're going to have come join us here in about 1 second is an interesting group to talk to about this and other trends, because if you think about the work of community foundations, they're really a collective reflection of what individuals, how they want to engage and what they want to do. Right? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to their moderator of this panel. We're really fortunate to have all 4 of you guys here with us in the house. But I'm going to introduce Greg Horowitz, and he is the moderator of this panel. Greg is a serial entrepreneur, investor, author, innovation systems architect. Yes, don't trip. He is currently a partner at Chi Capital and a founding partner in their innovation incubator, Chi Labs, as well as a member of the Society of Kaufman Fellows. Greg is the Director of Innovation at the University of California, San Diego, and serves as an adjunct lecturer at Stanford University. So I think he will be an able moderator for this panel. Thank you all, Greg, very much. Here you go. And here is your clicker.
Okay, who wants? There we go. We're going to figure out where that goes. It's a real honor to be here. This is not a space that traditionally on a daily basis I'm involved with. And the reason I think that Mark and the others asked me to participate is because as a serial entrepreneur and then a venture capitalist, I got to a point in my life where I came back to San Diego. I graduated from the University of California, San Diego, and began working with startup companies. And during that time, a mentor of mine had mentioned to me that power is all about having options. And I found that for the first time in my life, I had the options to do things I hadn't done before. One of them was to explore my intellectual curiosity. And one of the things I found interesting is that as an innovation community, I I wanted to understand why innovation happened, why more of it didn't happen. If people were writing books on the subject and every school teaches it and every business book incorporates it, why didn't innovation just naturally happen more? And the core of our work distilled down to that there is this knowing-doing gap, that knowing what to do and doing things is two very, very different activities, that we all desire novelty, we desire prosperity, and yet it can be quite elusive because that transition from taking it from an intellectual exercise to an emotional and then an actual actionable exercise is actually not as common as we think. And so a lot of my work has in that exploring my intellectual curiosity is how do we do a better job of connecting what we know to be right and what we know or desire to happen and actually make it happen. And how do we take it from, part of the time I spend at Stanford University is in what's called the D School there. And in the center of the D School, we have a sign that hangs from the ceiling. And it says, the only way to do it is to do it. And so we're very much biased towards action, that we realize the future has to be created. It has to be brought into being. And that a lot of the knowledge we need to actually create that future doesn't yet exist. It will exist in these experiments that we create. And that is the importance of a lot of these foundations that are in the room, and, is that you fund a lot of these interesting experiments that people do that create the next knowledge, that create the future and become the future, that we can't sit on this side of the wall and just intellectualize about what that future looks like. So therefore, in this panel today, we want to explore the concept of what is the role of community foundations beyond grant making? And really, how do community foundations not only act as funders of important projects within the communities, but also how do they become stewards of the community itself and take it and create that emotional resonance that allows people and empowers people and gets people to believe like a religion that these things can happen. And so I think I'm turning it over to Christy now to give a bit of a background.
Good morning. Greg, thanks for, is this on?
I don't know. Do you want to use this?
Always AV challenged. Perfect. That works? Awesome. Good morning. I'm Christy Wilson. I'm the president and CEO of the Rancho Santa Fe Foundation, and really glad to welcome all of you this morning. I think I have perfect attendance at the Governance Symposium since its inception. So I've been through a number of these, and I want to just say thanks for getting up early this morning and coming out, because what we hope today to accomplish is to give you some things to take back to your offices, if not this afternoon, Monday morning, some things to really hold on to. And we did want to go beyond grant making with community foundations. So as a little bit of an overview, community foundations are more than 100 years old, 106 to be exact. Started out in Cleveland as a group of people coming together and wanting to do something for their community, but they weren't quite sure how to do that. And back in the day, you went to your banker. Bankers knew a whole lot. They weren't government officials. They just kind of knew a lot about the community. And so community foundations started out as what we call community endowments, community trusts. They were all about stewarding assets for the betterment of the community. Fast forward 100 plus years to 2020, and we're talking about launching to infinity. That's a pretty lofty goal, and that is an intended pun on words. It's a big goal. You know, how do we start thinking, to Greg's point earlier, what infinity looks like? What's the future look like? What is our part in that? And we believe that community foundations play a very great part in that. We're partners with you. We don't do what we do in isolation. We do it with everybody, every organization, every nonprofit. This is a collaboration. It's a partnership, and it's built on trust. So those of us who are before you today, we're going to respond to some questions. We're going to have an informal conversation. I will leave you with one thought. If you've seen a community foundation, you haven't seen all community foundations. There are more than 750 of us in the United States and probably more like 1,700 around the world. So we all look different. And I think one of the blessings, frankly, in San Diego County is you have almost 16, 17 community foundations. Some are really small, some are bigger, but we all do the same thing. We all have the same charter. We're all 501c3s. But the way we approach our relationships with our boards, our governance, our donors, our community partners, we're all a little bit different. That's what innovation's all about, is how do we each do what we do, what's unique to us. So hope you enjoy our comments. We want to make this interactive. Save your questions for the end. And we've got some little profiles about each of us up on the screen, little known facts about our community foundations, and all the secrets of our private lives, including ironing money.
Do you want to just go first?
Yeah, so I'll go first. So I'm Christy Wilson, I told you that. Rancho Santa Fe Foundation was created 39 years ago in Rancho Santa Fe, and most of you are going, well, I've been through Rancho Santa Fe and there's not a lot of need there. You're absolutely right. Our goal is to push local resources out into the community. Most of our donors no longer live in Rancho Santa Fe, but we've kind of retained the name, so I'm here to tell you that less than 1/10 of our grants actually go to Rancho Santa Fe. Little known fact about me, everybody goes, oh, she's lived here forever. That's not true. I was born in West Virginia, and we don't marry our cousins in West Virginia. Commonly misinformation, but I've been in town all my life for the most part, and I've seen so many wonderful things happen in San Diego, and in particularly in North County. So that's my little known fact. Oops, wrong direction. Mark, you're up.
So I am the least tenured of my 4 colleagues and am 8 months into my position at the San Diego Foundation. Of course, I spent the bulk of my career, 30 years, sitting in the seats you all are sitting in. So I come to you from a humble position of being a grant seeker and someone deeply enmeshed in what nonprofits can do, and bring that ethic and mindset to what the San Diego Foundation will do as we move ahead. And you will hear us speak, and I will, you can read what's up there about me at your leisure, but you will see us no longer being solely a community bank, but being two-minded, being both a community bank and a community change maker, and we'll get to that fairly soon.
What's your deep, dark secret?
Oh, I love money. But I love what money can do, especially in our nonprofit community.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ann McEnany from the International Community Foundation. ICF I actually grew out of the San Diego Foundation. We were a donor-advised fund for donors that wanted to grant across the border when San Diego Foundation's guidelines would not allow them to do that. We started out very modestly with $300,000 in grants in our early years, and this year we're granting almost $10 million, and that's beyond the border. Yay. I want to thank all of you who have contributed to the Border Fund at the International Community Foundation. I feel like it's the most present and powerful work that we're doing locally, and there are many organizations in the room that have partnered with us to find solutions for the refugees and immigrants who are landing in Tijuana and finding themselves on the other side waiting to enter here. And it's been an incredibly powerful experience for our team to participate in that work and to join with those folks. So thank you for that. My little known fact is that I actually am a border baby myself. I was born in El Paso and crossed the border very early, like 3 months into my into my life. So yes, I've always felt the border and Latin America and Spanish-speaking world as part of my heritage, even though I'm Irish. So thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Beth Searle. I'm the president and CEO of the Jewish Community Foundation here in San Diego, and I've been in this job for, it'll be 3 years very soon. So I used to until recently, I was the most junior tenured. And the little known fact about JCF is most people think, oh, we're the Jewish Community Foundation, we take care of the Jewish community, which we do, but a good 80% of the grants that we send out go to secular causes. And the majority of the grants that we make stay in San Diego. We do consider, we're a community foundation, but we really speak about ourselves as a social change agent. Which sort of leads to my interesting fact about me, that I told my husband if I die before him that I wanted my tombstone to say, capitalism functions better because she lived, and I wanted it to be true. And that's because I really believe that if you added up all the philanthropy on the globe, on the planet, there would not be enough money to solve the issues that we need to address. And so our job as community foundations is to bring in all the partners, and the system of commercial activity is the biggest pot of money out there. And so it's going to take government and philanthropy and the private sector to address the issues that we're all trying to solve, because they're just enormous. And, I really believe in bringing that together, and that's why I'm going to hopefully have some impact on capitalism before I die. There we go. Let's leave up
Thank
our-
you, but it's there.
Okay,
All right, Greg.
Okay.
everybody's
so
been introduced.
Everyone's been introduced. Some of the comments up here touched on capitalism, capital, not so much for money's sake, but what money can do. So you were stewards of capital in each of your organizations, and many people have seen historically the role of community foundations as community banks. As you kind of look at 2020 and beyond, what does that actually look like? Is it the same thing and just more of it, or do you kind of evolve into something well beyond just being a community bank?
How do you want to?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Whoever
am I?
wants to jump in.
All right, well, I'll go first. I think it's an interesting term, a community bank, because if you think about a bank, banks like steward money, or as community banks, we steward money, but we also invest, we invest money, we give money away. And I think as we go forward, you're going to find that more and more community foundations and more foundations, period, more and more philanthropists are going to be looking to be using every dollar they have for social good, their principal as well as the what they give away. So, there's the granting, but then, we all have assets under management that are either endowments or, donor advised funds that people are treating like endowments or are giving away over time, and it's invested. That's why we're stewarding it. And I think you're going to find increasingly that people are using those investment dollars for good, and making what are called impact investments, so that they're earning financial returns and doing good, and they're also giving money away. And the really important question is going to be that I think we're all going to grapple with as we go to infinity, as it were, is philanthropy is the most precious dollars there are. So we want to use those where there's no other way. And then where we can make an investment, we want to use investment dollars because they're more plentiful. And so creating the right kind of capital stack to create the change that we want to see happen is what is, I think, the trend of the future. And we as community foundations have to figure out how to do that. So I guess that's an innovative community bank.
Well, I'll just say that as an organization that was incubated at a larger organization, we feel a tremendous responsibility to do that for other organizations. A lot of the special initiatives that we work on in Mexico and smaller projects evolve into nonprofits that then go on to take on much larger programs and addressing some of the challenges that Beth mentioned. How many people here have heard of the UN Sustainable Development Goals?
I almost wore my pin today. I forgot it.
So an early conversation with Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and the Conrad Hilton Foundation, they discussed the need of $3 trillion to solve the 15 or 16 challenges in the social development goals. 2/3 of that money is going to come from the private sector. How are we going to influence those dollars? How are we going to make our investments and our voices heard in that sector? Because that is where, that's what I've been thinking about almost ever since I've heard that, especially because we work outside the United States where there are more limited resources. We've been very lucky to work with some incredibly risk-taking donors who are pushing the envelope every day on what's possible outside the US. I would love to see more of that from all of our community foundations, but also just foundations in general.
Yeah, for the San Diego Foundation, we are deeply enmeshed in strategic planning at this time, and our board, do I have any board members here? Just making sure. Safe space. And so if any of you know the San Diego Foundation, we have a 42-word mission statement, which I'll never remember, and I'm sure none of you ever remember. And so we're going down to just simply 6 words, that the San Diego Foundation exists to inspire enduring philanthropy and to enable community solutions, period. That's all we do. And so through our strategic plan, we're breaking into Part A, inspiring enduring philanthropy, and Part B, enabling community solutions. And we're deeply thinking about how do we get beyond grant making and the things that we do, and how can we take on risk, and what risk will be sound. A couple of my colleagues from the San Diego Zoo are here, and one of my trustees from the San Diego Zoo is well known for a cliche about perfection. And thanks to Greg, I'm going to add one more word to it, and that is perfection is the enemy of done and good. And that's where we're going to be moving in the future, and you're going to see us taking risk. We are hopefully weeks away from announcing our largest discretionary grant that our board officers have ever made. They made it in 3 days. And it will be a very risky grant that we will do for some great good in a way that we've never done it before. So I think you're going to see us saying that how we've done things in the past are okay. Our community needs us to do things differently.
I guess I would just add that so much of what we all do and we do together is based on knowledge and data. We need to know what we need to know. And so by working with individual nonprofits, working with governments, working with the Nonprofit Institute around data gathering, I mean, who would think that there's almost 12,000 nonprofits in San Diego County? I mean, that's incredible, and the growth has been, pretty amazing. So we need to work together and share what you all do, what can be done, what the needs are, where we can be more innovative, and then use the community foundations and other organizations, some of which are government to be sure, to use that data to make the improvements, seek the solutions, address the issues that we all know are out there. We cannot do this in isolation. And so I see community foundations in particular, no matter which one of us is participating in that, is we can be a hub of information. We can bring people together. We're conveners. We're knowledge gatherers. We're knowledge disseminators. It is a collaboration. We are all in this together.
So in the title of this conference, the word governance appears, and there's in Sun Tzu's art where he says that, tactics are how you win the battle, but strategy is how you win the war. And what we find is that in order for good institutions or even individuals to serve as stewards in their community, there has to be something well beyond a mission statement or vision statement that talks about what you do and how you do it. And we heard the words before that it's about a social contract you have with your stakeholders and with the community. So what I'd like to ask each of you is, have you been explicit in developing a social contract? And if so, what is that social contract you have? Is it the same as it's been, or is there a new social contract that you're developing with the community?
So Greg, maybe I can start. So as a part of our strategic planning efforts, we've decided on guiding principles that for all of our activities. And I'll read you just the first 2 sentences of the guiding principles that our board has fully endorsed. I think they fully endorsed. We're at least at 80-20. We strive for a deeply ethical approach to philanthropy, one that holds ourselves accountable to being a trustworthy partner and approaching our work with humility and respect for the expertise of communities we serve and of the government, nonprofit, and business sectors and with individuals with whom we collaborate. We strive to be open-minded, to learn constantly, to listen carefully to different experiences and different perspectives, to build a strong and diverse coalitions, and to support community engagement, and to engage in shared decision-making. What you will not see, hopefully you hear from that, is you will never hear someone from the San Diego Foundation to say to you, we're the San Diego Foundation and we're here to rescue you. Those days are clearly over, or will never happen, and that everything we want to do is in partnership with our nonprofit communities, those who are doing great direct work in our region.
I'm going to save mine for last.
Okay,
Well, then
I'll
you go,
just
because
add
I
that
need to pull something up here.
I'll just add that the thing that really resonated with me was respecting the expertise of the people on the other side of the desk. I think that on our team, we work really hard to listen to what the organizations think will work in their community. That puts us in a position of kind of being a cultural translator and sometimes managing expectations of the donors that we represent, because often they come with ideas and really want those to be the ones that reach the end of the line. Our job in the seat that we hold between those donor communities and those individuals and the grantees that they want to support is to try to find places where those financial resources can actually meet the real needs on the ground. And we need all of you, when you sit on the other side of the desk from us, to be honest about what will work and what won't work, because we can't represent you in the other conversations we're having unless that honesty and that trust is really there. So that's one thing I'll ask for the board members and for the executive directors here, is to please keep those conversations as confidential as we can. Please be honest with us about what you think will work. And if we're saying something to you that doesn't feel authentic or what you think actually won't help you, please tell us.
So I just totally endorse that. So the Jewish Community Foundation also has a mission and vision statement that, I don't know how many words it is, but it's way too many words, and I'm working on that, actually. We don't make any discretionary grants. All our grants are donor advised fund driven. And so we do have a core belief in the power of every individual to make a difference, and that if we come together, we can change the world. And so we see our job as helping our individual donors make the difference that matters to them, but then our job to surface the big issues in our community and bring people together to address those. We do operate from 5 values that I think would be considered the social contract. And I pulled them up on the phone because they have 5 Hebrew words that I don't have memorized. So tzedakah, which many of you may have heard even if you're not Jewish, is the word for charity. But in Jewish tradition, charity actually is the same word for justice. We don't really have a word in Hebrew for charity. It's justice. So we're always pursuing, ethical responsibility and improvement of the world, that we seek justice for everyone. Dor lador means from generation to generation, so we're trying to make the world better, not just for us, but with a long view. Something called kavod, which has to do with respect. So we are going to listen, and that's where we're asking for truthfulness, and where we're keeping confidentiality. Torah, which is our learning. So another funny fact about us is we have a whole host of donors who are not Jewish, but we do operate from a Jewish values perspective. Most of those values are fairly common, but we express them from a place of Jewish tradition. And the last thing is called derech eretz, which means the way of the land, and that's about transparency and accountability and governance, which is kind of why we're here. So we try to bring all of those together to work with you and with our donors. As I said, everybody's got the power in their own way to make a difference, and we try to make that happen.
So you'll remember when I opened with my remarks that you've seen one community foundation, you haven't seen them all. I think Rancho Santa Fe is fairly different in terms of how we interpret our values, although they're in alignment with everything that you've heard from my colleagues. But we don't have a social contract per se, probably a little bit more traditional in terms of what kind of a community foundation we are. We've approached this conversation from a slightly different perspective, and that is around donor engagement. In other words, how do we get individuals, donors, their families, to engage in the solutions that the community has needs for? We actually have a special position that was actually just created. She's sitting in the first row taping this conversation. And that's her role, is to engage our donors more deeply in their philanthropy. So opposed to writing a large check, which most of them have the capability of doing, and just saying, okay, I'm done, it's thinking about it thoughtfully, espousing a lot of the Jewish values. Those are the International Community Foundation about engagement, Mark's statement, all of those kinds of things we don't have a real statement around it, but that's the philosophy. So individuals do have the rights and responsibilities to steward their money well, give it out into the community well, and we're hoping that we can get them to do a better job, and hopefully in partnership, not only with other family members, other donors that have relationships with our foundation, all of our foundations. How do we do this? I keep saying do it together, but it's all about doing it together. Everybody does it in a slightly different way. But I think our values around that and what we're trying to get our donors to do to help you is really meaningful. One last thing, there's a publication that was put out many years ago, probably 15 years ago, by the Grant Makers for Effective Organizations, GEO. Some of you may be members. And the title of the publication was Don't Do Anything About Me Without Me. And it has come back into vogue. It's actually being republished. For a while you couldn't even find it. But I would urge all of you who are working for nonprofits, on the boards of nonprofits, to really keep that in mind. Ann made that point. Bring us into the conversation, help us understand what you really do need and what our donors can help you do.
And can I just add one thing? Christy made an observation to me, or to us, I don't know, somewhere along the recent.
What it was.
Recently, well, because I think you're the longest tenured person, and you said something to the effect that the four major community foundations are collaborating more than you've ever seen in the history of your time here. And I think that's part of our social contract as community foundations, that, we don't really compete with each other. We serve sort of different groups, and I think we've made a big effort in the 3 years I've been here to build that, and I know we all have a contract to keep doing that. So, and I think in the end that works to your guys' advantage.
So that's actually a good lead into the next conversation, is that all organizations strive every day to determine what their relevance is. You have to ask that question just on a daily basis. Are we still relevant? Are we serving the needs of it? And at the same time, you're balancing as you talk to donors, as you talk to stakeholders. One of the things that they often can observe, particularly with community foundations, is it may look like there's a duplication of efforts, that there's a lot of people doing things that look or may feel very, very similar. How do you balance, in kind of this 2020 context, this kind of redundancy versus relevance? How do you kind of reconcile those? How do you kind of see yourselves? Do you think that a certain amount of redundancy is probably quite healthy for it? But then how do you kind of establish your unique value proposition to the community so that it sings?
It's tough.
Yeah. I think community foundation, just with the advent of what they call the commercial donor advised fund platforms, the Schwabs and the Fidelities of the world, we have had to really look up and say, what's our relevance? And, because they have a price advantage in terms of management fees that in a million years we could not ever meet. And at least for the Jewish Community Foundation, we really, we don't strive to be a low-cost provider, and I don't think any of my colleagues do. We strive to be the best value-add provider that we can be. So like Christy said, we're doing a ton in donor engagement. I think some of you might have attended our poverty simulation a couple months ago. Like, that was the first of its kind half-day thing where you really got to understand and have a visceral feel for how it is to live in poverty in San Diego. And so we're really trying to do, especially on the innovation front, like engaging with donors, not just a site visit, not that those aren't important, but really thinking about how to engage them in stomach-punching ways, if you will, ways that will really, and stomach-punching, heart-touching, that, that really then, open wallets and that really educate. Where, I know I said that only 20% of our grants go to Jewish causes, but we're taking a group of donors and just community people, Jewish and not, to Israel in a couple months to do a tour of NGOs, social enterprises, impact investment opportunities, because it is the startup nation. So we're doing Startup Nation meets social innovation. So that's an entirely different kind of donor engagement. And so we're really, we are not redundant, we are value add. And if anyone wants to come on our trip, I'm happy to tell you about it.
I want to go.
You're welcome. Come. Yeah, come.
I'll also add that as community foundations based in San Diego, one of our roles is to represent you to the rest of our sector. What's interesting about philanthropy is that it is a profession now. It's not just something that people give money away just on the side. You can form an entire professional lifespan around being a foundation representative. And I think one of our jobs is to take what's working in San Diego and in the border region and in Mexico and explain that and tell people about it in our sector and the rest of the country. We've done countless tours of the border in the past 3 years. We have advocated for San Diego as a site for other foundation colleagues to come here. We're bringing the Funders Network for Smart Growth here in March. Global Fund for Children is coming here to USD this month. We're bringing emerging practitioners in philanthropy. And I don't say we, just International Community Foundation, we as a sector are talking about the work that you're doing on the ground, and we're representing it. It may not be seen by you because those are often happening in rooms that are exclusionary just for people from foundations. But we are actually trying very hard to add value to the work you do by bringing additional eyes to your work, and also hopefully, and we're asking too, financial resources.
So I'll blame this relevancy on Greg Horowitz. So I was having lunch with Greg Horowitz probably 2-3 months ago, and I was talking to him about, I'd really love to bring the MacArthur Foundation's 100 and Change initiative to San Diego. And what if we did something like MacArthur, where we said, we're going to offer up a collection of funders $10 million for one bright idea that could change San Diego forever. Bring us your ideas. And Greg was really polite. He said, well, that's nice, but that's not how innovation happens. And he said, you're thinking about at the top of the pyramid. He said, innovation happens here at the bottom of the pyramid. And so why don't you think about grants of $50,000, $100,000, $250,000, and expect, I think you told me, expect half of them to fail,
at
to
least.
do meagerly. A third will do okay, and I think that leaves me an eighth, Greg, that will shoot the moon. And you should be really happy with shooting the moon with an eighth. So I have been socializing this idea among our board and our strategic planning, and so far it has stayed the course, and you will hopefully hear more from us on that soon. And it will be a number of funders that we hope to bring together to say, how can we really spur innovation here in San Diego that improves our region and helps us perhaps to scale it to other communities around the country as well.
So we have a couple donors that we're talking about a very similar thing with. So
See, now
should
we
have a
get
conversation.
together. Yeah.
Mission accomplished. I think it's also important to realize that, again, scale is relevant, is important to the conversation. To do something like Mark is alluding to is amazing and awesome, but there are lots of little innovative things that can happen on a much, much smaller scale, and I think we always have to keep that in perspective. We initiated something some years ago. Most of you know we're pretty involved with the military community, both active duty and veteran population. And we realized that there were a growing number of military serving organizations in San Diego, but they didn't really have street cred. They were generally veterans who decided that they wanted to turn their military experience into something positive. They really didn't know anything about governance. They really didn't know anything about running a nonprofit. And they certainly didn't know how to present a good financial and governance structure to people who wanted to support them. So we created the Patriots Connection. We've given away over $1.7 million to date. But the most important part of that is we created a tool for donors to vet the organizations that they wanted to support. It's called the San Diego Directory. You can find it on our website. There are over 100 organizations, all of whom have been put through a pretty significant vetting process. And the reason I mention that is that they're called organizations of distinction, but we can say these are organizations that are really doing good work. And so there's no money involved with it. We do all the work. There's no cost to it. But it's enabled these organizations, beyond what we've made in grants, to raise probably in excess of $5 million from donors that we know have used the San Diego Directory to support the work that they do. So there are all sorts of ways, big and small, to bring new innovative ideas to our community.
So following on that conversation, one of the internal conversations we had was this concept of risk, failure. No communities like the feeling of failure. It doesn't feel very, very good. And the concept of how do we balance risk versus certainty particularly when we have a group of stakeholders that would love a set of either predetermined or predefined outcomes that you're having. It's also important that from the innovation side, as Mark was saying, that very often it's a lot of these little experiments, and sometimes in our parlance, we talk about it's like in your garden, the weeds. These weeds, when they first present themselves, will definitely look like things that should be pulled out because they compete for very important resources. And yet our experience of studying innovation has been that the weeds are the next big things that very often when they first present themselves, they don't know. So how do you balance the articulation within your organizations to support kind of these mainstream, more predictive things that look familiar, things that hit our pattern recognition, versus the things that look a little bit odd but could possibly be quite exciting if they actually worked? And as you make your decision process, not only how you deal with that internally from a governance perspective, but then how do you articulate that to your stakeholders and your financiers?
So there's this term called collective impact, which I think all of you have probably heard. We're actually funding right now a cohort of 9 organizations working together on neighborhood improvement, neighborhood revitalization in a city called La Paz in Mexico. And what we're learning as a community foundation is that this work takes time. It's not something that happens overnight. People don't always agree. And one thing that nonprofits have very little of in their day-to-day work is time. How do you incentivize an executive director or a program director to show up every month at a meeting for this collective impact conversation when it's not really clear what the outcome is going to be? And I will admit that we started this conversation talking about illegal fishing and how to deal with illegal fishermen in this neighborhood. Well, it turns out that we're probably going to end up funding streetlights and neighborhood watch programs, because what people really care about in that community is security and improving the quality of life for that community and building trust amongst neighbors that will then enable conversations to move forward over the next several years probably are going to be, I don't know that we'll ever get to illegal fishing. and that's you know, something that I have to give up as the person who kind of has been spurring this for our program team. But to answer the question that Greg posed, I think it is the collaborative piece of it that's really missing in a lot of the conversations and proposals that we see coming across the desks that we have. We're not hearing from groups of organizations. We're hearing from one organization at a time. And that isn't inspiring a lot of big thinking. That's not inspiring a lot of risk taking. And I'm challenging all of you to think hard about some of the bigger challenges that your organization is facing and inviting your colleagues to the table, and then asking us to help support those conversations and to give you the time and space to take the risk and to push the potential vision a little bit further than you can just on your own.
Yeah, I think that's super well said.
So in terms of risk, I have a grantee who's here in the audience who's the CEO of a very good nonprofit who was selected by a national funder to go through a program to help him get scale, to help him grow in his resources, and because they found his nonprofit to be one that, you know, if we could make this work, we could make this work elsewhere. And so what I've done is I've reached out to his funder and said, why aren't you doing more of this in San Diego? You know, Ben's a part of this great big national network, but why aren't we doing this here in San Diego? And so we're having a conversation soon to say, what if we did exactly what Stand Together is doing for Ben McHugh and Outdoor Outreach, and we get a whole cohort here in San Diego, and we give them the same sort of experience to help grow programs like Outdoor Outreach, and Ben as its very bright and engaging CEO, who's got a trajectory for it which is remarkable. And so these are some of the things that I hope that we're going to continue to see as risk and opportunities that will, you know, cost us dollars to do so, but these are the kind of risks and trying to do things for some of our smaller nonprofits where we really want to see them grow and be more impactful, not only here but elsewhere.
I don't have any real specific example. I'll take a pass.
So I'm thinking about this a little bit differently. you know, when I got here 3 years ago, I inherited a pretty conservative organization, and risk-taking wasn't really what they did, you know, internally. And so I can't ask my donors to take risks if I can't get my staff to take some risks. And what I really want is my donors to be willing to say, okay, we'll put money in this and we'll see what happens. And, you know, if it doesn't work, we'll learn something. And as long as we're going to learn something from this grant or this investment, then great, because that's valuable too. And I do, as an aside, I agree with Christy on the data front. Like we can convene, but we don't, like one of the things you have to learn in managing risk is knowing when you have enough information. Like the most important thing I find when making a decision is now the right time to make the decision. Do I have enough? Because if you wait too long, you miss the opportunity, and if you make the decision too quickly, you didn't have the right, you know. And as a leader and as a board, or as a CEO, just being able to feel that out is really important. So, but I really started out internally, really shifting a culture to where my team really will take initiative and try something. And we actually instituted a little spot bonus program, and we celebrate, you know, when someone does something above and beyond, that, you know, or something innovative or takes initiative, whether or not it succeeds, you know, we have a little pot of money that we can, you know, distribute. And one of the ways that you will get people to take intelligent risks is if they're well enough compensated and they're not in fear of their job, which that's a huge problem in our sector, you know, in this sector, that people, I don't know how many of you saw Pat Libby's latest blog post, and I will confess that I don't read all of them, but I did read this one, and she makes a really good case about compensating your employees appropriately. So I think, you know, you have to build a culture internally that encourages innovation, and it really does mean that somebody's going to do something and it's going to really fail. And you have to be intelligent about it. I mean, you can't risk half your budget on it, but you got to celebrate the effort, not just the outcome. I will tell you, it was in what I initially thought was a terrible thing, but turned out to be the most fortunate thing ever. In my first year at JCF, the person who made the biggest mistake was me. And I just owned it. You know, I just said, hey, you know, I've been here 8 months. You know, not a great decision. Figured out very quickly that it wasn't you know, and we failed fast, as you guys would say. We failed fast, and now we've corrected it. But it turned out that because I made this mistake, and I owned it to my staff and to my board, I have a ton of credibility with my staff and my board. And I didn't even realize, I mean, when I first made the mistake, I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But it demonstrated, I didn't lose my job. There was no sinkhole. The world did not open up, and I did not drown in it. Nothing. We learned. And it cost us a little bit of money, but we learned. And that learning stays with me and stays with the organization. So I think you have to start internally in the culture that you have to encourage people to bring up ideas. What did Nathan say? He said, I asked a question and someone said a supervisor has never asked that before. You got to encourage people to ask the questions that nobody asks. And you can never say, not that you would, but you can't treat anything like a dumb question or a dumb idea. And you got to be willing, if people come up with 6 ideas, you got to find one of them that you can at least do something with so that people are encouraged to come forward with more. And then you will find an abundance of good ideas, and then the problem will be which one should we tackle first. And that's a great problem to have.
Right. And in respect to the schedule and respect for everyone's time, are we...
Are we taking some questions, or where are we?
That's it.
Yeah, we're taking some questions.
Exactly. Oh, Evelyn.
Can you announce yourself, just introduce yourself, because we cannot read your name.
There's a mic coming around
We
as
cannot,
well.
we cannot read your name tag from here.
Good morning. This was wonderful. Thank you so much. My name is Fenella, and I am the executive director of a small nonprofit, ironically called We Companion Small Animal Adoption. I have heard the word collaboration said multiple times. I'm a strong believer in power with collaboration. I've also heard the statement how precious time is, especially for small nonprofits when they are driven by a very small core of people who are working round the clock. My challenge to you is, if there are 16 to 17 community foundations within San Diego, and you have mentioned that the largest 3 or 4 are beginning to collaborate, for a small nonprofit, I sit here and I think, okay, that's 16 foundations I have to then individually approach. And that's a lot of time, that's a lot of work. So my challenge maybe to you is to think, is there a potential for us to streamline our application process to a San Diego collaboration, with all due respect to your
Yeah.
individual foundations?
Yes, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's really important to understand that fundraising is an active sport. It's actually a contact sport. And I mean that in the nicest of ways. Fundraising doesn't happen because you have a bright, shiny brochure. It doesn't happen because you have a great mission. People are not necessarily compelled by the small but mighty nonprofit. It's what you do. And when I say it's a contact sport, it's because it's face-to-face. At some level, you have got to connect with your donors. You have no discretionary dollars. San Diego and Rancho Santa Fe have a very small percentage relative to total assets. So most of what we do you have discretionary dollars?
Very small,
Yeah,
less than
so
1%.
that discretionary pot is what you're really kind of referring to. We don't have a lot. It's very hard money to raise. And so we have to be pretty judicious around issues that are critical and whatnot. And so when you say, can we do a common app like you would to a private foundation?
To college.
Probably not going to happen. But what you do need to do is really connect with your donors. You cannot connect with donors when you sit in your office, whether your office is at home or in the 4th floor of a building. You must connect. And particularly in what I consider a pretty high-tech world that we live in, low-touch fundraising, which is part of high-tech, is pretty easy to pull off because you send an email or you do a tweet or you do whatever. We need to have higher interactions, building stronger relationships with our donors. And I will be really candid, I've said this before and I get tomatoes thrown at me, there are too many nonprofits in San Diego. There's too much duplication of effort. You probably have organizations that have your exact same mission around the corner. And this is where collaboration comes in. Donors are not necessarily loyal to the organization, they're loyal to people.
And the cause.
And to the cause. That was a pause.
Sorry.
The cause. So that's what you really do need to focus on.
Yeah.
And we'll help you collaborate. If you reach out to any one of us and say, do you have donors who support small animal protection? We'll do what we can, but you can lead the horse to water, you can't make them drink. Donors will support what they want to support. So you need to make your fundraising efforts, your outreach efforts, your communication efforts a contact sport. You probably have other feelings about
I was
that,
just going to add, I would take it a step further, and I'll probably get, rocks
You're gonna
thrown
get
at
tomatoes,
I'm
too.
forget tomatoes, I'm going to get rocks. But, there, look around, not just who you should collaborate with, but who should you merge with? Because there is duplication of effort, and it is just part of the DNA of our sector that we all think that our nonprofit, there's something special, and that what we do is so unique. We couldn't possibly merge with anyone. It's my baby. But really, if you thought about it, about the cause and how you could be effective and impactful, it could be that if you really fully combined forces with other organizations and got a little bigger and had less overhead and spread out, that that you could be more impactful. So I encourage you to always be thinking about your cause and not about your baby. And then I'll go like this.
To that point, we're actually thinking at the San Diego Foundation, how do we arm and empower the nonprofit sector so they don't have to come to us for a grant. And so I'll give you one idea. One thing that we're looking to do, and I've had conversations with several people in this room, is why not have a major fundraising conference here in San Diego? For those of you who go to AFP or to other causes, you spend several thousands of dollars to go all over the country. Between the four of us, we probably know all the best fundraising scholars, the fundraising gurus. Why don't we bring them here and you have a $200 conference? And it could be the bright shining star. We could be Planet Philanthropy, the great thing that's in Florida, right here. And then your whole team gets to go, not just one person. And so one of the things that, and as I'd be meeting more with my colleagues, is to say, how can we help bolster up the community? And then you all get to be with each other and can help start thinking about how do you collaborate more, merge more, and duplication. But again, help you be better at fundraising. It was 2 years ago when I was here who I said to your board members, and board members here, I still want you to do this on Monday. I want you to go to your nonprofit and say, what is our percent of first-time donors who make a second gift? You got that? First-time donors, nobody's writing it down, I want you to write this down. The percent of first-time donors who make a second gift. The national average is 29%. So board members, your nonprofit spend $2 most likely to bring every new dollar in, and then they're only keeping 30% of that. And so so if your number's under 29, you're in bad shape. Your number's 29, okay, you're average. Shouldn't you be at like 60? Shouldn't you be at 70? Why? And then, multi-year retention is 10 cents on the dollar. So go back to your nonprofits and say, what is our first-year donor retention like? And what the heck are we going to do? I'm sorry, I always say pickles. What the pickles are we going to do to get that number up? And then again, you don't need us because you're doing it yourself. And perhaps we can help arm you to get better at doing that. And so these are the things that I hope that we can help spur here in San Diego.
Correct me if I'm, what's the percentage? Once you give a second gift, your likelihood of giving a third is like enormous.
Enormous.
So this is, we're in an election year. The hardest time for a congressperson to get reelected is the very first time. Like you get elected, if they get elected a second time, if you got elected in 18 and you get reelected in 20, the likelihood is that you can sit in Congress until you die.
That's a different conversation.
No, but it's the same theory. It's the same theory. If you can get them the second time, then you have them. So I reiterate that. big time.
Also, we haven't given Greg very much time to talk about his own work, but he's just written a book called The Religion of Innovation. And I urge all of you to look at his TED Talk and maybe pick up some of his writing. What he's focused on, and I think it's for all of us to reflect on, is this idea that we need to challenge our own beliefs, our own rituals, and our own habits in our organization and just get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. How else are we going to innovate? If we go in and do the same exact thing every single week, how are we going to innovate? How are we going to evolve? How are we actually going to get to the point where we can experiment if we continue to do the same thing all the time? And I'll tell you how I see it. I see it in the proposals that you send. They look exactly the same as the proposal I got last year from you. I don't want to see that. It really bothers me when it's actually one of my pet peeves to receive a proposal that has the same exact information that you sent me last year. I want to see that you're thinking about what needs to happen 5 years from now and how are we going to get there. So if you're in a governance chair, I would like you to challenge your executive directors and your leadership teams to do that. I'm sorry, I'm running out of breath because I'm talking too much.
Great points.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you, panelists. My name is Doug Brown. I'm board chair of the International Institute for Human Factor Development. We have a budget of approximately $100,000 per year. And in terms of a grant proposal, what guidelines would you suggest? Now this would be my first grant proposal. What would be your guidelines regarding that bottom line figure about how much to request in that grant proposal?
What are you trying to do with the grant? And where's the budget? Show me how you're going to spend it.
I think there's two parts to Beth's answer, and that is your operating budget, the $100,000 that it costs you to run the organization, what part of that is devoted to the program for which you're asking for funding? So if you're asking for operating support, that's a conversation we should have, because everybody needs operating support, right? But is it operating support? Is it program support? Is it a hybrid? A little bit of both, because you need people to run the programs. So you need to be clear what you're asking for. I will also just say we don't accept unsolicited grant requests, just right off the bat. We'll go find you if we're interested in the issue area or we have donors. I don't know how the rest of you do.
No, we're the same.
Because we would have a full department of 20 people if we accepted unsolicited grant requests. This is where I go back to build a relationship with the people who you want to support you, and be really clear about what you want the money for, and be prepared to say, this is the deliverable. It may not be a 5-year continuum of outcomes, but this is what we plan to deliver with your grant, and hopefully your grant, along with many other grants that are supporting this same initiative, will get you further faster.
Oh,
So my name's Colton Strasser. I'm a PhD student here at the University of San Diego. You talked a lot about the new role of community foundations, so that community leadership role. But there's also been some conversations on how to include community voice within community foundations, either through participatory grant making or other strategies. So how does your community foundations go beyond just the donors to get feedback, whether it's about community issues, and how do you go about collecting and utilizing that feedback?
So Colton, that's a great question, and I actually see some of my staff here, so I have to be very careful about what I say. But yes, Michelle, I hear you. So we are just launching a new initiative in early childhood learning and development, and thanks to an incredible donor, Guy Klum, we have a $10 million fund to draw down in 5 to 10 years, focused on early childhood and development. And what we did is we took a look, as I have a very talented staff in community impact who said, let's take a look at the literature and the research that's out there and what are the good programs. And we really found that there was no great body of knowledge of what direction we should take with these dollars. So we have, and Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong, we probably engaged 100 different stakeholders and organizations in and around San Diego, from electeds to, I just saw Peter Kallstrom, San Diego Workforce Partners, and others, to really help us figure out what is that sweet spot, and particularly, what's the gap? And I think where you're going to find the San Diego Foundation moving in the future is figuring out what's the gap where we need to do work. And so you'll hear an announcement on January 30th of a $1 million grant competition. We'll be offering an RFP for innovative ideas in childcare and early childhood development, then with a smaller, more responsive $250,000 grant. But we involved at least 100 people. This probably took us 4 years to develop of what we were going to do to move forward, because listening is really important to us, and then finding out how do we make a difference with the precious dollars with which we've been entrusted. And that's also something I just want to get to very quickly is you have to remember, this ain't my money. This ain't any of our money. What we are entrusted with is the money of others.
That's right.
And so if you hear us in some ways just saying, we don't take unsolicited proposals and the like, it's because we have this grave responsibility to care for dollars that have been entrusted to us. And so what I would often say to you is, one of my wisdoms I often share with people is always make your boss a hero. When you come to us or we engage you, help us think about how we make donors heroes. Because if you can help us make donors heroes, there will be more money coming to philanthropy, and it will come in rivers, not buckets, if we can help donors be the heroes in making a difference.
I think your comment about listening is really important. We started a program a couple years ago called Vision Now. A tagline of the Rancho Santa Fe Foundation is to put your vision into action. And we started listening to our donors, that the issues that they were making grants to, but also that they were really interested in. And so we hold a couple Vision Nows a year. They're small kind of salon type events, and we bring in extraordinary panels like this one And we talk about the issue, human trafficking, veteran support, international grant making, things that our donors are interested in. And we've been able then to reach out into the community and find the people who are doing the best, most interesting, clearly the most innovative work. And then we learn from them, and our donors learn from them too. And that's where the kind of more rivers of grant making as opposed to the buckets has started to flow out of our foundation. Good question, Colton.
Hi, I'm Paul Eichen. I'm the chairman of the board of Kids Spark Education, and I'm also an alum of the Nonprofit Leadership and Management Program. So I think it would be fair to say that you're actually that the alums of this program are, I think that Laura said this morning, about a third of them are now in executive positions, are the most highly educated and probably represent the future of leadership of the nonprofit sector in San Diego. And they have such a broad range of experiences and capacities. And having hung around them for a long time, I'm always in awe of what these nonprofit professionals can do. And I'm just wondering if you can imagine ways that they can be incorporated into innovation within the community foundations.
You stumped them. I like that.
Well, I'm an alum, and I entered the program at a pretty late stage in my career. But I guess I would say is that it's not just alums of this program. I think we all need to be sponges. We need to simply be hyper aware and hyper sensitive to everything around us, and there's not a lot of time to do that, thoughtfully and responsibly. But we need to be sponges. We need to spend 2 days like you've committed to this week, and talking with our colleagues, collaborating, learning, reading. There's a lot out there, so you have to be able to filter it. But we need to be sponges, and I think to Greg's point and the point of our comments this morning is that if we're going to be innovative, we can't do what we did yesterday. Some of you may know Marshall Goldsmith. He's a local resident, and he wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's only like 100 pages. I think you've read it. I see you shaking your head. It's short read, and if you know Marshall, he has the attention span. It's about 30 seconds long. And but the point is, we all do things to get us to a point. But if we're going to get to the next stage, it takes a different way of thinking. It takes different people, new boards, getting up earlier in the morning or sleeping in later, whatever. But it's a change of habit. It's the ability to take risks, changing your behaviors, being willing to say, I was the biggest mistake in the first 8 months I was here, and owning that. That's huge, Beth. I mean, it really is. It's hard when you sit in her chair and say, you know what, I messed up. But the staff says, okay, well then when I mess up, she's probably not going to come down on me quite so hard. I'm going to learn from that.
Right.
So I think being a sponge, I don't know if that really answers your question, Paul, but I think we all have to be learning all the time.
I'll just ask Laura and Emily in absentia to come back to us with what that might look like.
Right.
We have a really small team. I only have 8 people running a $10 million grant program in 9 countries. So I don't know that we have the ability to absorb and train a lot of people inculcate a lot of people into our way of doing business, but I am really open to how the university might be able to add voice and value and expertise to what we do every day. I would love to hear what Laura and Emily think about how that might work.
I think the curriculum of the program has definitely evolved. When I started in 2010, it was pretty boilerplate. It was excellent. But I think the curriculum is evolving. So I would suspect that Laura and Emily would tell you that they've moved the needle on the way topics are presented, how the learning's presented. I think I'm proud of this program, and I think they've done a pretty good job. We can always do better.
So Paul, to that end, one of the things that we're discussing as a part of our strategic plan is we have no need to duplicate the work of others, and that we just don't have the time nor the bandwidth to do that. And so what's great about the Nonprofit Institute is it is just a hub for research. I mean, one of my favorite books that the 29% comes from is Data-Driven Nonprofits by Steve McLaughlin. If you haven't read it, read it. But that's kind of the backbone, that without great data, we're just shooting in the dark. And so that's one of the things that I really love about the Nonprofit Institute. Its State of Nonprofits is right on my meeting table. You come to my office, you will see it front and center because I'm so proud of what's done here at the Nonprofit Center.
Hi, I'm Heo from the Kim Center, and our mission is workplace gender equity. We're a hybrid social enterprise with a clear path to scaling nationally. So Beth, I loved what you said about capitalism, and I was wondering if you could speak further about how capitalism and philanthropy can work together.
That's a big question. I mean, you and I have spoken about this some. Do you have a more specific piece you're interested in? Because it's a huge topic.
I'll just yell.
Yeah.
There are existing models for capitalism for corporations, grants, foundations, things like that. And I'm just wondering, are there other ways? Thank you. Are there other ways that you have thought of that foundations, community foundations, can work to encourage capitalism to support things like perhaps social enterprises,
Right.
nonprofit social enterprises?
I mean, I don't think there's a lot yet of community foundations in the country doing a ton of work at this. I think everybody's beginning to think about, how to do this. I do think increasingly there are demands on the corporation to be socially responsible and to have a purpose beyond just making money. I don't know how many of you remember Ray Fink, I think? Larry Fink. Oh, Ray Fink is a local person I know here, actually. Larry Fink at Black Rock. So at Black Rock, his letter 2 years ago out to his investors, and they are the largest asset manager in the world. And he made a point of saying, if you want support, you, a company, want investment from my fund, from BlackRock, you will have to show us how you're making a difference in the world, that you have a purpose beyond making money. And some of the reason for that is that increasingly people want to purchase from companies that they believe in. They want to invest in companies that they believe in. And really importantly right now, they want to work for companies that have a mission beyond making money. And so I think that you're going to start to see community foundations developing the expertise to start to work strategically with businesses to help them showcase and leverage, or identify, showcase, and leverage their social purpose. It will get easier for us and for them as more and more corporations become B corporations. If you don't know what a B corporation is, I'm happy to explain it another day, or go to bcorporation.net and the whole explanation is there.
The wonderful thing about community foundations, and forgive me for showing my preacher kidness for a second, is that we are a mansion of thousands of rooms. There are so many things that can be under community foundations. We are talking with our board in February about a mergers and acquisitions strategy that we are going to take a look at, particularly at bringing B Corps underneath us, where we might develop our own financial institution on development and getting monies deployed into the community that are not charitable dollars, but invested dollars. And so we're taking a look at that right now as something that we may do to really harness this great capitalism that includes philanthropy, but there's other investable dollars that can really make a difference.
Along those same lines, a lot of times social enterprises, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, if they have an earned income revenue stream, to get it off the ground, they need philanthropy. Philanthropy is catalytic.
Yep.
And so when you said that first $50,000, that $50,000 grant to a seedling social enterprise might get it to a place where it could actually raise private dollars. And even it might be a program-related investment or a below-market investment, but it's still not a grant, and so it has access to greater pools of capital. And so, to the extent that we can use philanthropy to seed good ideas that could potentially be sustainable financially with investment from private dollars, then all of a sudden somebody makes a $50,000 grant, and before you know it, they've raised $5 million of capital, and they're serving 10 times as many people.
Happy to chat with you two offline. We've just started, or we're in the formations of starting a new institute at Stanford that I'm a co-founder of, which is the Institute of the Study of New Capital. And what we're doing is we're redefining what the word capital means in a 21st century context to say it goes well beyond the checks we write or the money we allocate, that our intentions, our motivations are forms of capital, and we're creating tools to better measure and index the impact of these other forms of capital that then amplify the actual check writing aspects. So we can talk to you about what that looks like in the context of what we call the word capitalism.
Morning. My name is Deblina. Yes, I'll be quick. I've been privileged to be on the nonprofit grant receiving side, the program side, and I now sit on a board that gives. I appreciate we are all gathered here today to talk about an absent beneficiary in the room, and we are all talking about problems that we want to tend to zero. I'm encouraged to hear so much collaboration and thought given to focus points, but it seems to me that we are still asking the over-large nonprofit grant-receiving sector, all the nonprofits that we see are duplicated, to match the ask, the desire to the dollar. They have to still reach the heart to get the money. Now, it seems to me to do that, there needs to be a lot of information available to them. So I don't know if this has already been addressed, but could you speak to how information could be democratized, could be made available to the lower bases of the pyramid, so that we can see the kind of thoughtful, research-based collaboration among nonprofits that we are now seeing among funders in this room?
Really good question. I don't.
It's tough.
No, I mean, I think all of us are struggling with our own systems and to upgrade our own systems so that we have better information about what our donors are doing. I mean, we process 6,000 grants a year, to the tune of $100 million. And I get the pie chart, but it's not very detailed, so that it's not as if I have phenomenal data to share.
We publish a Mexico Giving Guide every year, and we actually take the time to reach out to all of the organizations that are receiving grants from us to update their information. That's all online. It's linked to their website. We do a specialized giving guide just for Baja California Sur because that's a place where we do have a lot of donors. But beyond that, it's
That's exactly
vouching for the organizations beyond what the organizations are doing for themselves becomes slightly problematic because unless you're updating that all the time, you are risking your own reputation and representing an organization that you may not be up to speed on of a leadership transition, or they forgot to file their 990 form, or you can only do that at times when you're doing your due diligence on any particular grant. So I'm not sure that we are the right organizations to have all that information, although having said that, we do have it, and we talk to donors about those things all the time. It's just not, it's not digital.
Yeah, the Jewish Community Foundation has something called a charitable catalog. And right now, it's only available to our donors, and it's sort of being built. But any nonprofit in San Diego can get a login and a password and can put a page up, so that when our donors log in, and they can either search it, or increasingly, we have them giving us information that we're collecting that says, that they care about animals, and then your page will come up as a suggested granting opportunity. So if you have not built a charitable catalog page, I would encourage you to contact the Jewish Community Foundation and build a page, and then you're exposed to our donors. And we're looking at how we, what we're going to do with it beyond our donors as it grows, but it needs to be built. So we have to have the information in order to disseminate it.
Yeah, agree with all of them, and it is tough because that information has to be updated. And the question is, you know, everything we do in fundraising and in philanthropy is relationship-based. And so when we advocate on behalf of nonprofits, we're putting our reputations on the lines with our donors. And so we have to be very careful about the information we seek from you. One of my very first days at the foundation, I was doing a site visit on a nonprofit whose mission just really touched me, and they're doing great work, and I shared it with a donor who also has a real close tie to this, and the guy came back and said, "Oh, this isn't for us." And I said, "Well, what do you mean this isn't for you? This is perfect for you." They said, "Oh, no, you had to go really deep into the financials to see that, you know, the ownership issues are strange here. There's some things going on. The husband and wife are CEO, CFO." And I started to say, wow, so I recommended this, and, you know, I've got to do more homework myself.
Right,
So
me too.
this is a challenging thing for which we don't have answers yet. But I will tell you that on the side of our new mission of inspiring enduring philanthropy, the number one SMART goal for us is developing a better interface between donors and the nonprofit community and knocking down the Chinese walls that many believe exist between the nonprofit community and the donors who have donor advised funds.
I'll leave you with one thought, and there's no one in the world that can tell your story better than you can.
Agree.
So know what your story is, know what you stand for.
And on that, that's a wonderful way of kind of for us to conclude. We're at the end of our time together, so would you join me in thanking the panelists today?
This is so much fun.
And let's continue the conversation.
Okay, thank you all.
Greg.
Final
You were awesome.
thoughts. First of all, give him one more round of applause, please. Okay. Thank you. Just as of yesterday, we have a great schedule planned for you. Just a couple of things. A reminder that at 4 p.m. in the rotunda right out here, we're going to have a mixer with some people seeking to join boards. We're going to have some drink tickets. We'll have some activities out there for you. And then also make sure you're using the app and social media. Yesterday, I asked people to befriend me. Thank you for the 2 of you that signed up to be my friend. Make sure we use the app. Also, if the room is crowded, you might have to find another room. Thank you all very much, and have a good time.